Did Jesus really rise? Well, I hope he did, otherwise what I'm doing is a complete waste of time, but as a day job. But more importantly, Christianity would be a complete waste of time, because Christians throughout history have believed what we've believed because we believe it's true. And not just a metaphor, but that it's historically true, that Jesus bodily, physically rose from the dead. And I think we really can have confidence in that. My life has changed looking at this evidence and hearing a talk on it, because there are many that think it didn't happen. So we can look at the evidence this way. We can look at his absence from the tomb. History records that Jesus' body went missing. And people try to explain that different ways. Christians obviously say it's because he rose again and now he's with God in heaven. But those who don't believe, some say, well, maybe he didn't die and he escaped from the tomb. This is the swoon theory, that he passed out on the cross. The Romans didn't know that. They buried him accidentally, not knowing he was actually still breathing. But despite having been flogged and crucified, Jesus revived in the cool of the tomb. And then after doing that, he pushed a one-stone rock out the way that was closing the tomb. And not only that, he somehow escaped a platoon of crack Roman troops who were guarding the grave to make sure that no nonsense happened, because Jesus said, I will rise again, and the authorities didn't want that rumor spreading or anything like that happening. So he would have had to move the rock, escape the soldiers, then run into the bush and never be found again. So that's one argument that people offer. You can probably tell I don't think it's very credible. The second thing is that his disciples maybe stole the body. But remember, these disciples were traumatized. They'd seen their leader flogged, tortured, crucified, dead, buried. They didn't want that to happen to them. So they were all in hiding. So psychologically, it doesn't make sense that they'd, bandy together and go and take on the Roman soldiers to overcome them and push aside the rock and nick a dead body. That's just not where they were at. The other argument is that the authorities stole the body, but the authorities wanted Jesus dead and buried. They'd got their wish. They would never have gone and taken the body, hidden it, and allowed for these rumors to start that Jesus is alive, he's the Messiah. And even if they had done that, they then would have produced his body and thrown it down in the marketplace and said, no, he's not alive, here he is, dead, now get on with your lives. But they couldn't do that because they didn't have the body. The third argument along those lines is that robbers nicked the body. But what's interesting here is that the grave wasn't completely empty. The grave clothes that Jesus was buried with, that contained many herbs and spices, about 75 pounds worth of weight of herbs and spices within the grave clothes, they were left in the tomb, and they were the only thing of value. Without that, you've just got robbers making off with a dead and rotting corpse, which I imagine is quite hard to sell and make any money from. So terrible robbers. So those arguments don't really make sense. But it's not just Jesus' absence from the tomb, it's his presence with the disciples. The Gospels record that he made about 11 appearances to different disciples at different times in locked rooms, walking along the road. One time he appeared to more than 500 disciples at the same time. People say, well, these were all hallucinations, presumably. Well, people do hallucinate, but 500 people do not have the same hallucination at the same time. And these people, their lives were changed. The disciples went from scaredy cats to preaching the gospel and being tortured and killed for their faith themselves. One of them would have cracked and said, oh, he's buried in the back of Peter's house in the back garden. But they didn't crack because they knew that it was true. And finally, you've got the historical argument that for 2,000 years, billions of people have had their lives changed by an encounter with God through Jesus Christ. And today, around 2.5 billion people believe and follow him, and lives are being changed day by day. My life was changed looking at this evidence. So I encourage you to look into it more yourself.